it is all yours for 1 hour. Now, allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to acquaint you with our research activities, with cannabis extracts and our plants, therapeutic plants. We've been doing our utmost to build on the works of 1950s by Professor Chandavi and Krejci and their disciple, student, that is Mr. Hanush. Currently, in medicine, we use cannabis predominantly with a high THC content. And if you think of the fact that the THC molecule may, cause apoptosis of malignant cells or can mitigate the pain, but does not, of course, cure the disease or does not eliminate the root of the disease. And 5% of patients need the cannabis molecule. The rest of them do not need it. THC in the plant actually restricts the treatment by restricting the number of patients that might be helped by a cannabis-based treatment. It also poses a limit or restriction on the treatment as such. THC content means we can only administer palliative dose and not a curative dose, since the patient is impacted emotionally very strongly. So these are the varieties of strains we grow, that is up to 0.3 THC% in dry matter. We only use these varieties of strains due to law. Based on the 167 of 2008, these are not considered psychogenic or psychoactive plants, since they do, and also because they do contain significant substances, pharmaceutically obtained cannabidiol or cannabigerol, so CBG and CBN. We believed to begin with that the patients we had, who were usually elderly people and were paralyzed to a higher or lower degree and suffered from obstipation, which is not a serious condition. But when we studied technical literature, we realized it was not that negligible, because biochemical reactions in the colon could cause deterioration of their disorder. They had many diagnoses. So we started using cannabis extract, and we made a product that could help us tackle or simply solve this seemingly unimportant problem. We had 3 parts. First, insoluble fiber, and you well know it has a strong impact, but not only mechanistic impact, on the movement of bowels. Bacteria of milk fermentation actually are bound, and the bacteria of this fermentation release butyrosis, which is butyric acid, and in 2013 there were some reports published that have proven on in vitro that butyrosis can kill those cells that cause the death of epithelium of the colon. So we did use the insoluble fiber intentionally and use some substances, hydrophilic substances and lipophilic substances, which we derived from cannabis. And at the very end, we did a solution of hydrophilic substances. We mixed that with insoluble fiber, then dried it and added lipophilic stuff, and thus we contain a mixture, a very homogeneous mixture that one could precisely dose. We did commission an analysis in an accredited laboratory and got the result showing the composition of the individual cannabinoids. This did work. I mean, the stuff did work on the product. Constipation was done away with, and the patients no more suffered. You might think that was it for us. On the very contrary, it was the very beginning. Since there is a dogma that cannabis without THC has no therapeutical effects, and I told you content was 0.3 THC, plus we use the oils to further dilute it, and the laboratory test suggested that 1 gram of our product contained 1/40, so 25 milligrams of THC. If the patient's dose was 4 to 8 grams per day, depending on his comorbidities, he got 1/10 of a milligram of THC, but other cannabis substances as well. And we did not merely produce the extract on an industrial basis or technical basis. That means in order to obtain lipophilic substances, we wanted to get hydrophilic substances as well. But obviously, independence on the time of use and depending on the diagnosis of the respective patients, the effect which we called unexpected positive side effects occurred. And I can further add that, and we were aware of this since the very beginning, by using certain plants which impact the qualitative and quantitative composition of the colon, and by adding a carrier in the form of insoluble, insoluble material, and the fiber also helps, or is a kind of growth medium, substrate on which bacteria fermentation and some harmful stuffs which would deposit in the bodies of the people for years were eliminated. Perhaps you can see the logo that we have, which is butterfly wings. And since we work with this butterfly wings effect, that means a very low amount, a dose of a certain substance can have a huge effect. We called it Canna sativa novum. And we started adding to the cannabis some other curative herbs or plants, medicinal plants. We added to the formula these substances because these people, by having suffered from constipation, suffered from some bowel impacting disorders. The inflammation conditions improved, which was proven by the results of CRP analyses or tests for CRP. We use 3 basic principles behind Fytoterapie: empathy with the patient. I guess every medical doctor is empathic, but he shouldn't only focus and limit himself to his specialization or his field. Psoriasis, for instance, is a disease we have to take into account. It's not that you have a rash or something, but it's usually a problem associated or caused by immune system deficiency or some sort of disorder, which is due to the disorder, so to say, or improper management in your colon. Then empathy with medicinal plants. Don't take it as an industrial plant only. Take it as a donor that donates substances which are to help you increase better results. So you have to create good conditions, and you have to stress proper harvest. Frequently you properly manage the growing stage, but then fail to properly harvest it. And the synergic effect or entourage effect did occur. Important was also the way of processing. And with this empathy, you have to bear in mind that this involves photosynthesis at night during the day. If you study or read the literature, you will see that some substances are actually made during the photosynthesis of the day. That means you have to harvest them during the day, while others develop or form their active substances at night. Before the daybreak, or right before the daybreak comes the optimal time for harvest, at about 3 o'clock in the morning usually. Cannabis contains roughly 146 active ingredients or substances. If we set aside THC, then in cosmetics, CBD is used in particular, or CBG, and all the other substances or components are thrown away as waste. And it's only because we are unable to use them. They do have the potential, and the entourage effect would occur. So bear in mind the very last sentence. Cannabis does not only mean CBD. You have to use all the other components present. We worked with several persons. We now have about 300 patients. Some people suffered from constipation, but also suffered from diabetes, and glycemia started to fluctuate or change. That was diabetes, second type diabetes. And once we have evaluated about 60 patients, we did identify the glycemia dependence, which differed in men and in women. In older women, the drop in glycemia was more significant than in young women, and the similar applied to men. We haven't had any hypothesis why this was the case. We all know that it stimulates pancreas, it helps make insulin or generate insulin, and we also had the opportunity of using simply this preparation or this substance for a diabetic patient. He was roughly 65 years of age. We had many patients. We follow the time at which we actually started to administer the drug. He was 65, diabetes, second time surgery. They had to first surgically amputate the thumb and then the second toe, big toe and then the second toe. I will tell you more. This is the process of healing. The patient underwent surgery on Tuesday afternoon. The week before that, he was on this preparation. We administered anti-inflammatory drug as well. And he was, as I've said, he underwent surgery on Tuesday afternoon. He didn't need total anesthesia, general anesthesia. Then he refused to take any painkillers after the surgery. Then on Thursday, when they were changing the dressing, they realized that the healing rate was immense. And on Friday, he was actually released. Then, when the second toe was amputated, he had to stay at the hospital for 50 days. And this is yet another effect of the unexpected positive side effects. This lady is a patient who had breast cancer. She underwent chemotherapy. During the chemotherapy, immune system was damaged. She was fairly young, 35 years of age. She had suffered from some mold of fungus, and she had this sort of shaped nail on her big toe. The therapy she underwent about five years ago. Their hair turned gray, and they started, so to say, she lost her hair. Apart from improvement, then, once we administered the drug, the cannabis-based drug, the nail started to grow away to be about 1/3 of the nail. Obviously, that grew on then was healthy, was intact. Yet another disease that we have come across, with which we had several, namely ulcerosis colitis and colon cancer. The current method is the administration of corticoid steroids, and you can also use some derivatives. I know there is no other better treatment or cure, but conservative treatment is accompanied by a number of adverse events. Cushing syndrome, that means swollen joints, all kinds of eczema, and acetylsalicylate mean negative impact or simply adverse effects on the liver of the patient. And the patient here again took different doses, different formulations, and we got the feedback from attending doctors. This lady was 66. She suffered ever since she was 35. That means 36 years already. She has been suffering from ulcerosis, ulcerative colitis. We started administering these in ever higher doses. By that, we increase the effect to prevent diarrhea. Then we add yet another sort of component in order to prevent inflammation or inflammatory process. And after 10 days or 14 days, she suffered from no diarrhea at all. So after 1 month, when she was, so to say, self-confident, she went for a walk, and she already had underwear. She hasn't worn underwear for a long period before. Then her husband called us and said that we've managed that well because she can now help him do the gardening, which he couldn't do before.
Another problem we had was a man with skin cancer. During irradiation, his abdomen was severely burned, and in the institute where the irradiation was performed, his body was, his abdomen was burned with, you can see in the middle, purative inflammation in the middle. They used tramadol, which is an opiate just for pain suppression. And then we developed another mix to support regeneration of skin. And then we had a mix of emulsion and applied it as a pack. You can see the green stuff. These are depths soaked with the solution. The solution was dark green. And there you can see how quick the healing was. The actual ointment, when you make it with Vaseline, is a problem. We used emulsions which absorbed other substances, antimicrobial substances apart from cannabinoid. And you can see how quickly the skin healed, how quickly how extensive was the damage at the beginning of the month. This was the dressing, 2 weeks, 2 months, and you can see real healing. And the previous speaker mentioned that they applied the cannabinoids to addiction. When this person went home, he responded with anxiety. We gave him cannabis preparations without THC, and he wanted him to not to use tramal if he could cope. And he and his family was afraid about abstinence, withdrawal symptoms, no problems. He couldn't speak for 3 days, but day 4 he was all right. But perhaps the greatest encouragement for our work was this patient. Her Christian name is Jarka. She agreed we can mention her name. You can see her as a 54-year-old woman with the multiple sclerosis, and that started when she was 32. She has been paralyzed on wheelchair. Partly she could move her left hand, but she couldn't move her legs. And the repeated classical application of corticoids really that didn't help, apart from swelling of her legs. She called it elephant legs. This lady also was constipated, and we didn't really expect that the therapeutical the effect would have more the effect than the removal of constipation. I have got about a 60-second video which I wanted to show you. Madam Jarka, 3 months after the cannabis, the treatment for obstipancy said the hair, the back, became sensitive, buttocks became sensitive. I informed the neurologist, and I consulted another neurologist at the teaching hospital, and both experts agree that this is definitely an improvement, that simply once she feels pain, there is an improvement in her body, and perhaps the preparation which we applied slowed down the development of the disease, and that she may build what is called reflexive arc, and control the movement of that muscle in other ways. And for Madam Marta, after 3 months, she had pain when sedentary. Then 3 more months, she started to feel pain in the legs on the wheelchair. And the other 3 months resulted in her moving her hand, raising legs. And that was a moment when we started another neurological examination, and we sent her to a rehabilitation the facility where she stayed for 3 weeks. And I was personally present during part of the neurological examination. That is to say, she was treated by Kana-san. And the doctor who received her made a simple test, namely, Madame Jarka was sitting half a meter next to her desk. The doctor put 2 books on the desk, and when writing, she pushed the books down, and Madame Jarka suddenly, grabbed the books, a movement which she was unable to do before. So we agreed her condition improved significantly. So she went to this rehabilitation facility. Again, very positive results. She was regularly examined by various medical devices, and when she returned home at the end of 2016, they bought a stationary the bicycle for her, and she can, so to say, operate this bicycle for 2 hours. A lady who couldn't move for 18 years. Another lady, Madame Anne, patient who some 6 years ago had a brain stroke. This is the lady who had this poor nail growth. And, once she took our therapy, her hairdresser said, I won't apply any more the dye because it healed. She had a brain stroke and was paralyzed, wholly paralyzed. She was in a hospital, the long-term patients, her condition didn't improve, so she was placed in a facility, and she had constipation, which again was treated by suppositories, etc. Her husband heard about positive results using our therapy, and he came to ask us for help. She was then transferred from this facility home because she only had 48 kilograms of body weight and very poor prognosis of life. She was completely paralyzed. She couldn't even eat. She was on a probe going right to stomach. And her husband made a good idea. Our preparation is based on oil. So he used the oil laced with the cannabis with her food, and it wasn't that she would really move or smile. She was unable to respond at all. But we were interested about her health. No constipation, that was okay. But Madame Anne, when she was at home, she had to go for a blood check. And the doctor said that they had to repeat the blood test because they believed there was a problem because the sample of blood showed such major changes that they were improbable, really. And once her metabolism started and she was able to get rid of pollutants, her liver tests improved significantly. And a year later, the doctor said that looking at her blood test, it is not blood of a 65-year-old woman, but a 50-year-old woman. Madame Anne, in the meantime, started to respond. Her initial response was that she would smile. She was unable to move her face before. If the husband said something of a joke, she smiled. Then she moved one leg, one arm. Now she can move one leg. She can eat normally. And during 12 months of therapy, she gained 6 kilograms. Blood is okay, so it means that the patient is not suffering, only the family is. But the happiness of patients does apply also to our pets. Dogs, cats, and other animals. Can we try the micro video? You will see a Labrador Retriever, aged 12 years. The response of the dog to our preparations triggered extensive research in veterinary medicine. The dog was 10-year-old, and when he suffered internal damages, damage to liver, he was given antibiotics and others, constipation, and you really cannot treat the animal like a human, and also the markers didn't improve. SGGT markers in liver didn't improve. And I already knew at that time that patients with obstipation would benefit from our preparation. So instead of mix of plant oils, I offered him lard, pig lard, and we added it to the delicacies for him. And the curing was inevitable. I treated the dog for 2 or 3 weeks, and then the veterinary doctor called me and said, "Why didn't you come for another test? Is the dog dead?" And I said, "We treat him with cannabis." And he answered and was angry with me, saying that I have drugged the dog, etc. I tried to explain that we hardly give the dog any THC. And then he became interested. And we started to cooperate. And right now, we cooperate with many different veterinary clinics, particularly Veterinary University in Brno, where we have many patients, or patients are referred to us. And this is a dog, again our patient, now no more a patient, he's cured. And that's the dog which belonged to Madame Jarka, the first woman on the wheelchair. The dog is 14-year-old, it hardly walked, and the family believed that this is an old dog ready to die. He was unable to walk down the garden. And no constipation, by the way. So what we administered to the white retriever, we administered to this dog as well, and the dog started to run away, and a month later he can run up 19 steps. He can jump on the windowsill next to Madame Jarka and look out of the window. A video should show the dog running upstairs. The health of the dog is tremendous, and the hair is wonderful as well, smooth. Before the treatment, it was really graying. And we had animals. This is dog. Newfoundland big dog with arthrosis. On the left, you can see these small clouds round the bones. The dog was about 6-year-old. He had major pain, and the only therapy was tramadol. So in order to, give him good night's rest, otherwise he was moaning. 3 months later, he not only had less pain and he could walk, but when we made the second X-ray, again, the same doctor said that the development of arthrosis at this age slowed down by 80 to 90%. We use this preparation and apply it to dozens of animals. And this is cannabis preparations applied to a dog. Accident. Third of his body, the whole right side of his body was etched by some chemical. We couldn't show you the very first photograph because that really would be very stressful. They tried again to apply ointments, give him painkillers, but the owners had one last hope and called this the veterinary college, and they gave them recommendations. We had experience with a patient, like I showed you, whose belly was burnt by radiation. So here we modified the quantity of active substances and we administered it both perorally and we applied a pack on this part of the body. The prognosis of the dog was no life, death due to injury. And the dog started again very quickly. The dog's metabolism is very fast, so they respond to treatment significantly faster than humans. The healing was wonderful, and 4 weeks later, and here 6 weeks later, you can see how it diminished. And this is 4 months afterwards. The dog is live and healthy and has no problems. This dog has parodontosis. Parodontosis for animals is a big problem, both for the animal and for the owner. You can see it's white dog, and the hairs round his mouth is black. The stain by secret from the sick jaws. He can't eat, of course. And the dog was smelling really. If they had a visitor, they had to lock the dog next door in order not to stress the visitor. So we applied the mix. And in 10 days' time, I repeat, in 10 days' time, the smell stopped, his mouth stopped smelling, and the therapy continues. But we also have animals from zoological gardens. This brown bear, a big bear, from a zoological garden, 35-year-old, elderly men, and therefore strong arthritis, very painful. And he was given tramadol in order to suppress the pain, but addiction, increase in dose, etc. was obvious. We prepared a mix, which we sent to him all the time. He would take about 50 grams per day, but the result of the therapy is enormous. The bear is walking, and initially they mixed in honey, and because he didn't reject that particular mix of ours, no more honey. A panda, red panda, similar problem. An elderly lady, tramadol. The animal was apathic, sitting, and wouldn't walk for some 2 years. We changed the recipe, and And instead of the plant oils, we use coconut oil. So what we fed to him, there was black and red paste, 2 grams in one dose in a banana. And because they have to report every week, they reported that in 4 days' time, the panda started to walk around, and 2 weeks later, she would climb the tree, which she simply wouldn't climb for 2 years before. Another patient is Lemur. Had arthritic pain in the front, the legs. The animal is suffering with pain, is neurotic, and started to bite his the toes. And we offer the same preparation like we applied to panda, and again the animal cured, hopping round, no more chewing of his own legs. But the patients can be very special. This one, for instance, you would think that Leguans wouldn't have any problems, and this is obstipation. See X-ray. And once there is obstipation caused by sand particles, a surgery is necessary to do away with constipation. Again, we prepared a special emulsion which we dripped into his mouth, and the scent was released and there was no need for surgery. For Leguanas, we had other strategy as well. Say, the owner of the Leguan would let him run around the flat, and he would eat a bit of a toy. And surgery is a must, of course, but our preparation increases the speed of healing of the surgery wound and start eating quickly. That is to say, his metabolism improves and he is healed soon. A patient whom you would think is problem-free are turtles. They too suffer from constipation. Constipation, and on the left you can see that it was so severe that in the colon you would have a mixture of everything, and the result is death. And you can see the autopsy, the black, the curl is constipated colon, which resulted in death. And after the autopsy, we removed the content of her colon, and you can see that it really has the shape of her colon. Veterinary doctors who treated these turtles and who are apathic when they constipate, stop eating, they were given the same recipe like Leguana. And the turtles, 90% of them started to defecate, which means that the intestine was released and there was no need, and they survived. And this is the snow, the Erbis snow leopard, again zoological garden. Poor walking, pain. It was obvious that his life in pain is difficult. He got the same recipe like the big bird with a slight modification of the composition. But today, if you go to the zoological garden, you will see him happy. And this is the basic strategy. Namely, we want a feedback from our patients, SMS or email. So it may be the themselves or their relatives or the animals hold. We ask for feedback. At the bottom, -1, -2, there was never. Sometimes it was neutral, sometimes it was better, but oftentimes it was very good. And you can see that cannabis is the multiple-use plant, fiber, the leaf for paper, food, etc. But we don't use them fully. And here I prepared you a diagram or bar chart which shows which diagnosis we had and which may indicate potential of this plant if used properly. So we started in 2015, obstipation and dermatological problem. We knew that when we tackled the colon, it must be reflected in psoriasis, etc. But the constipation was reason number one. End of 2015, we started with veterinary medicine, our encouragement by healing of the Labrador dog. And we received feedback for patients who were treated for obstipation. And they said, I stopped pain in my arm. I have no inflammation of the skin. And then, we gave our preparation to patients other than obstipant. Say, they came from the doctor and they said rheumatic arthritis, and acetylsalicylates don't help. We administered our preparation, and oftentimes these are people over 80, or they are people who will be, professionals in medicine, doctors, associate professors, sorry. In general, let me highlight the following. You can see diabetes type 2. This is the response to cannabinoids added to the preparation for people who suffered or who continue to suffer from glycemia. It would never, so to say, go back to normalcy, but it improves. And we added substances, say, in 2014. Stimulation of pancreatitis was reported in a journal. Psoriasis and then the colon. If you have a poor ratio of bacteria, wrong ratio of the milk fermentation bacteria to others, if there are no substrates where the bacteria could live on, you add substances which either contain milk fermentation bacteria. Problem, however, is that 99% would be liquidated by stomach. And if they luckily, in a capsule, proceed to colon, all the better for us. So they are administered at a time when there is little substrate on which to live, and they die. And we need the colon to have this insoluble fiber there, to have the bacteria not only at the beginning, to have them everywhere, in the middle, and produce the metabolite which we use, which is butylase, and which is then used to cure inflammation. But at the same time, it has impact upon other bacteria. It can suppress or remove bacteria which make our life complicated. Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, regeneration of liver cells. That's a separate story. There we prepared recipes with plants which would be thermally unstable, over 50 degrees centigrade, it wouldn't be activated. So we emphasize to these patients that they should not warm up the preparation. Urinary tract inflammation, chronic inflammation. This normally is the problem of women, and often it is antibiotic abuse, and the body keeps a resistant strain which may start a minor problem, say cold or draft, or the response to some food, and the inflammation starts. We edit substances which destroy and can liquidate bacteria in this field. The result was that if the woman has this diagnosis and receives the preparation, 3 or 4 days, her urine has a darker color. This is the color of the liquidated bacteria, but it gets back to normalcy and no problem. We use this for patients after surgery of kidney stones, where we had inflammation. We administered the same mixture and we managed to do away with the inflammation. Metabolic syndrome, that's part of regeneration of liver cell, and diabetes type 2, stimulation of pancreas, diabetes first type. They are all interrelated, and I will explain the interrelations. Inflammation of veins. We had many patients who were, say, shop assistants, or they were hairdressers. That is to say, people whose profession required the standing, and they had these veins. And this was varicose veins. Most of these veins, so to say, then were hidden under the skin, and we consulted this with our colleagues in the profession, and they said that if they start when the inflammation can be treated, the substances stop the inflammation and the vein, so to say, returned under the skin instead of bulging above. Then additional phytotherapy. But one important thing to add, the preparation, if it's based on mix of vegetable oils, the influences blood. Blood then becomes thinner. But this is like, for instance, when you take Velvarin. But this effect is really due to suppression of the coagulation cascade. Here, it was omega-3 and 6 unsaturated fatty acid in the preparation, and it helps to prevent thrombosis. And then the muscles and joints. You would have a patient say that they can't raise the hand or pain in the arm, and X-ray never showed anything, but sono, ultrasound, found a formation. This lady was an accountant, 54-year-old. We have her X-ray. And ultrasound, they found a formation about 3 centimeters large. And we started to treat her. Encapsulated inflammation. We added antimicrobial substances, because you either can have there the cells of bacteria which died, so you must administer anti-inflammatory substance, or active ones. So if you open the formation by, say, sunflower oil, the bacteria There we use antimicrobial substances which enter blood. They are not antibiotics, they are purely natural substances obtained from cannabis and some other plants, but cannabis is the basis. And they can liquidate the bacteria. 2 months later, the formation was only pea size. I showed you the burnt the skin carpal tunnels, both men and women. Carpal tunnels in men are very frequent among the bricklayers or car drivers. That is to say, the tunnel that gets inflamed and surgery is recommended. We had a patient, 52-year-old, who in June last year was sent to us with carpal tunnel and designed for surgery. He was a professional driver and he had to continue driving, so he received a similar mixture like the mixture against the formations in muscles. He used it 3 months before the surgery, and they decided not to do the surgery, and he never took any drugs afterwards. Problems disappeared. A same story of the hairdressers. All of this, of course, depends on potential adjuvant disease, Crohn's disease. You would find it at the location where the thin the intestine meets the colon. We edit our preparations where, in case that there was a stomach tumor which was not malignant, in order to speed up the process of healing and promote digestion of food. I will mention this later. Lymphatic glands inflammation, very special. We had several. All of these patients were women. They had inflammation of lymphatic glands, treated in different departments, massages. The joints were swollen, detention of water in the body. We used several of our mixtures, and we have 9 actually. And the patients started to lose their water in the joints, and 6 months later they would see their joints, not just a swollen something. Hair loss, say women aged 50, whose lifestyle, damaged hair. The hair is not smooth, no color, dropping of hair, hair loss. And overhead, there is new growth, and hairdressers would appreciate that. Myasthenia gravis was interesting. This disease, we had in 2 patients, smallest group, young men 33 years old and a woman 45 years old. I will describe the course of the therapy. The young man had a partner, a medical doctor. Well, I'm afraid it's 5 p.m., so your time is up. So, all right, 5 minutes then to comment on the last column. These diagnoses, they show also the number of patients we had. At the top, we have qualified estimate of total number of patients who would benefit from the treatment in West Europe or United States. And based on our experience over the past 3 years, we are sure of the following. The role of cannabis as prevention. And just a few seconds or minutes. 20 to 30% of adult population in Western Europe and United States they have the stenosis of liver. This is because the wall of the colon is not not impermeable. So substances go from colon back to the body, overburden the liver, and the result is cirrhosis and cancer. So this steatosis threatens some 250 million people. Inflammatory intestine, it's not also important, but systemic inflammation. The basic mission of cannabis and cannabinoids in the therapy is prevention by removing systemic inflammation. Every movement by the arm or leg means hundreds of the cells which burst and cause inflammation. Millions of new cells are generated every minute. And imagine that you would have about 3% mutations of the 3 replications which take place in your body, and part of these mutations can be beneficial to your body, namely you cope with, say, global change or environment, but some of them are detrimental. And the detriment would show not in a year or 2, but in 10 years' time by cancer. So personally, I perceive the basic use of cannabis as prevention of all these inflammatory changes at the DNA level during replication. Imagine that you have a cube, and if you would be able to identify the center of gravity of the cube, you would be able to cast the same figure always. That is to say, dynamic balance. If you move the center of gravity in the cube, it won't be equal, it will be 1.05. And during this division and the millions of cells and the enormous number of mutations taking place means that there is an increased pressure or increased probability of cancer. And this is where I feel cannabis can be prevented. Thank you.